A huge thanks to all of the supporters at Patreon, YouTube, and PayPal that make this content possible. April Susanne Wiss was a 16-year-old from Wichita, Kansas. She was tall for her age and loved to meet new people. On the night of January 11th, 2000, April left where she was living, telling her roommate, who was her mother's friend, that she was walking to Walmart. April didn't return. She was never seen again. I'm Ed Densel, and this is Unfound. For some reason, over the past month, I've brought back into the Unfound lingo something I used to say early on in this podcast's existence. What is the statement? I feature long-time disappearances not because they're common. In fact, they surely aren't. Nope, I feature long-time disappearances because of the destruction that they can do to families and civilization as a whole. For example, the bubonic plague killed 50% of the Europe population over 7 years in the 1300s. I mean, horrible, of course. Yet Europe recovered. However, imagine instead if 50% of the population had disappeared with no explanation. What do you think would have happened? Chaos, and it would have been unfixable. Well, with the disappearance of April Wiss, we try to figure out what happened to her, while keeping perspective with the mantra, mysterious, harmful, and rare. And now a summary of the case. This is brought to you by my friend Megan Linus' website, charleyproject.org. April Wiss grew up in a family affected by divorce, with her parents living 15 minutes from each other. April split the time between them 50-50, with her having to go to separate schools for each. Yet, she was able to build friendships in both locations. At some point, though, April's mother decided it was better that April live with a family friend, Tina. And April had been living there for only about 3 weeks before disappearing, but had also not been going to school. More seriously, in the preceding couple of years, April had gotten to know a 17-year-old who was charged with multiple sex crimes, and she was to be a witness, a reluctant one, in his trial in February of 2000. So, on January 11th, 2000, as far as the facts go, this was a day like any other. That night, about 10 p.m., April told Tina that she was headed to the local Walmart, a very short walk from where they lived. There's still no proof as to whether April was to meet someone, but April did not return. She was never seen again. Tina alerted April's family fairly quickly. Reports were taken. Places were searched. Importantly, when the trial date arrived, April did not appear. The defendant was still convicted of crimes against multiple girls and just recently, in 2024, got out of jail. Importantly, though, he was in jail at the time of April's disappearance. Thousands of children run away every year. The number would boggle your mind. However, 99.99% of them return alive with no harm done. Contemplate if there is any way to initially differentiate between all the kids who will return and that one in several thousand, like April, who did not, as you also try to answer these 3 questions during the interview. Number 1, there would have been no reason for someone in the defendant's family to harm April since she didn't want to testify anyway, right? Number 2, how much does April not going to school factor into her disappearance? And number 3, Is this another case where we must really question whether the missing person's final words, in this situation, April saying she was going to Walmart, were really, truly truthful? All sorts of theories have been contemplated by April's family over the past 24 years. The guest for this episode is one of April's best friends at the time, Amy Wilson. Unfound News. Yesterday, March 14th, Dr. Telesco and I got together to produce another fantastic episode of her show. We discussed what we call the anatomy of a disappearance by going through what would have happened had I not made it to Pennsylvania on March 4th. Next, you know you're into disappearances when you're at the hospital and within seconds you're talking to a nurse about two different disappearances. And neither have been covered by Unfound. Yet. Finally, in a couple weeks, I'll be doing a Zoom teaching session with communications and journalism students at Texas A&M University. If my college business administration degree professors could see me now. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound one of April Wiss's very good friends, Amy Wilson. Amy, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on today.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and going back, of course, to the early 2000s, you knowing April the way you did and getting your insight on her disappearance and how you've been working on it very hard for many years. And we're, of course, going to talk about that. But to start, just so everybody can get to know you a little bit, you can say as much or as little as you would like, just maybe a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Currently, today, I am a mother of 4 boys. I've been married for about 16 years. And
wow.
Yeah, so busy with life.
Congratulations, 4 boys. Do they keep you busy, Amy?
Absolutely.
Yes, and I have to ask, what is the age range of your kids?
So my oldest, he will be 20 in May, and my youngest he's 4. And then my other son is 8 and then 6.
Wow, look at that. That's an interesting age dispersion.
Right.
You had one and then you had the other 3 like much later, right?
Yeah, teen mom for my first one.
Yeah.
Grew up with him and then had my other 3 with my husband.
Fantastic. Good for you, Amy. Boys, fantastic. Did you ever want any girls?
I would have liked to have at least one, but the cards just didn't play out that way.
Okay,
so.
Very good. Just so they're all healthy. That's what parents always say, right? Just so they're healthy.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. Okay, so we know a little bit about you. Mother of 4 boys. Good luck with that in the upcoming years, Amy. Moving on, let's talk about you and April. How did you two know each other? How close were you? What would you say about knowing April, I guess going back to the 1990s?
Yeah, I first met April when she lived with her dad. She moved in with her dad. We lived a few houses down from her dad, and so naturally, kids in the area, we all got together and hung out, and we were around the same age. I was a little bit younger than her, so there's myself, and then I have an older sister who were kind of closer in age. And I met April when I was about 13, I believe. And so from 13 until she went missing, of course. But so that's how I met her, is just by living close by.
All right, so you're hanging out in your neighborhood, and is this in Wichita or some other city or town in Kansas?
It was in Hayesville, Kansas.
Hayesville, Kansas. Okay, so you're kind of hanging out on your block. Her parents are divorced. She's visiting her father, and you just kind of met in the neighborhood.
Yes.
Okay, very good. What do you remember? How did you spend that time? What do you remember about April? Personality, interests, things like that. What can you say about April? What are some of the things that first popped your mind into your mind when you think about her now?
April, we always had a great time together, always. So she was one of those people that you could go and literally do anything with, or you could just hang out. And a lot of times we would listen to music. Back in the day, that's when we had the good old cassette tapes where you had to use the pencil to rewind it.
Yes.
So we spent many hours doing that, but we could literally do just about anything and have such a good time. She was funny. I still remember her laugh, like if I were to hear it even just yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
She's just one of those people that you could trust. Also, she's very trustworthy and just a really good friend to have.
Mm-hmm. And so it was just the two of you, or did you have like a little clique of girls, or what?
Yeah, there was a group of us. Well, it was my sister, my older sister, and myself and April. We were kind of the clique that hung out together. My brother was there, but he didn't hang out with us as much, but he definitely hung with us sometimes, but not as much. We were definitely the tripod
Okay.
team, so.
Okay. All right, so the three of you all hanging out together there on that block, that neighborhood in Hayesville, Kansas.
Yeah.
Okay. And when it came to, did you go to school together? I know, of course, in a prior conversation we talked that maybe April went to two different schools. You went to school together, and then she went to a different school. What was the situation with that?
Yeah, when she moved with her dad, she did go to Hayesville. It's called Campus, was their high school.
Okay.
I believe she only went there for maybe one of the school years, but yeah, we did go to school together also.
Okay. All right, and when she went missing, we have to remember she was, under 18 when she went missing. So was she going to your school or a different school at the time of her disappearance?
At that time, I don't think she was going to school at all.
Oh,
I don't
wasn't.
believe.
Okay, maybe we'll get into that in a bit. Okay. And so how often, I realize, maybe at the time you really don't understand these things. Do you know kind of how often she would spend with her dad? How often would she spend with her mother? Was there any sort of court stipulation as often? We know that often happens. Was she constantly living with her father when you knew her, or was this just like a visitation thing?
When I knew her, she did live with her dad primarily. She still would see her mom and have interactions with her mom and see her mom and have visitation. I don't think there was anything really like set in stone, like you have to go over there specific days. It was kind of just as she wanted to go over there. But she was living with her dad full time when I had met her.
Okay. And when we meeting her, maybe would this be like 1997? 96, yeah. 98, somewhere in there.
It was probably 97.
Okay, 97. All right, very good. What about, of course, this is going to be a major topic later, but what about the two of you, and once again, I'm not here to get into girls' personal lives, but meeting boys, hanging out with the boys, liking boys, chasing boys, was that like a thing that you two really shared a lot, or not?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we had our little tripod group, and that was something it wasn't just even with hanging out with boys, but that definitely, we would hang out with guys, but we would party together, and just really hang out together, but we were always together when we did things.
Okay. And I'm guessing there were boys maybe around your age in the neighborhood, correct, that you might run into once in a while?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. How about once again, the way we would understand problems for middle-aged teenagers, that mid 13, 14, 15, 16, any problems that April had, and maybe now that you are a parent yourself, maybe you have a little different perspective on it. What can you say about, that topic?
As in problems, are you referring to?
Like any, emotional problems. For example, how did she handle her parents being divorced? Or maybe other things, maybe some underage drinking, things like that, anything like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, we definitely had our party time for sure. I'm sure my parents definitely wouldn't like to know that, but yeah, we definitely did. We would, smoke a little weed way back in the day. We definitely drank. Hung out together, but overall, April was happy. She was happy.
Yeah.
I would say there is definitely some times where she would get down, but she's one of those people, she's kind of a product of her environment. And so if she's around people that have a positive mindset and, just a happy environment, she tends to thrive in that environment.
Okay. How would you explain what you observed her relationship with her father, and how would you contrast that with a relationship with her mother? The same or different, closer to one another? Once again, I'm realizing this is just your perception.
Yeah. I would say her relationship with her dad was good. They definitely he would provide boundaries for her, but I felt that they were age appropriate for her. And, they would talk, and they weren't like super close, I didn't feel, but it was definitely where she would be able to talk with her dad, and she respected her dad for sure. So I never really saw them like fighting a lot or anything like that, and she was respectful to him. With her mom, it was more fighting probably with her mom.
Okay.
They definitely did butt heads a lot more than with her dad. Okay. She was more rebellious with her mother for sure.
Okay. What about siblings? April have any brothers or sisters?
Yeah, so April has a younger sister, and then she has, I believe, 3 brothers, and she does have an older sister on her dad's side. So the 3 brothers and younger sister are from her mom, and then she has an older sister on her dad's side.
Okay. So when she would, for example, be staying at her father's, was it just the 2 of them, or were there other children there?
It was just them.
Just the 2 of them. Okay.
Yep.
And did you ever have an occasion to go? My understanding from a prior conversation is that her parents lived maybe about 15 minutes away from each other. Did you ever have an occasion to go over there and hang out at her mother's as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We would go over, and sometimes when she'd go to her mom's, we'd go over there and visit. I always remember her mom would make some sun tea for us. It was a sweet sun tea. That's one of my core memories with her mom, that, she always had that ready and prepared for us and things like that.
Okay. All right. So you've gotten to know her, and maybe I'll ask you this also regarding, of course, you are a friend of hers through her father. Did she have like her friends over that neighborhood too, like that weren't friends with you? She had friends because she was living in 2 different places. Did she have like friends that you were not familiar with, maybe?
Yeah, definitely. I know that she had friends when she was with her mother prior to even coming to her dad's, and likely even after she left her dad's. I didn't know, like back in the day, it was a lot more difficult to kind of become acquainted with other people, because one thing, you don't have social media to like piece it together,
Sure.
And so it was kind of like, if you were in that area, we knew of you, but I was not familiar with her friends at her mom's.
Okay. All right. Very good. Let's move on to this. Now, we said that you 2 went to school together for maybe 1 year, but like you said, when she went missing, maybe she wasn't going to school at all. The way you remember it, and we have to understand, of course, you were a teenager at the time, maybe not totally maybe understanding some of these things, but what was it eventually that led to April living more like toward her mother's, and we're going to get into the new living arrangement, maybe living more over there instead of spending more time with her father? Any idea what happened there?
Yeah, what happened is, at her dad's house, he had started dating a woman that she was not fond of, and so she decided she did want to go back to her mom's.
Wow. Okay, so father gets in a new relationship, new woman, and April not getting along. Of course, we know there's nothing unusual about that. That's happening all the time, kind of in blended families, things very, very common. And that's what eventually led to her living more with her mother. When would you say that happened? Your best guess?
It was, I want to say she was definitely 16 when it happened. I don't even remember the month or anything that would have happened. But okay. It was in 99, I'm sure.
1999 sometime. Of course, we have to remember she went missing very early in 2000, so I guess that would make sense that it might have happened in 1999 instead of 2000. Okay, and so when this happened, I'm sure you weren't too happy about it. Did you two keep in touch? Of course, this is, I guess some people had cell phones in 99, 2000, but did you talk very often? How did you two meet up if you could? Did you get dropped off somewhere like at the mall where you could meet her? Or what happened after that?
So after she moved, I also, like you said, I was younger also, and things in my household were different. I also moved in with my dad, and so our connection where we had access to each other close by was no longer there. So we really had to go out our way to try to, connect with each other. So I do remember I did go over to her mom's house a few times after she had moved back, and I didn't have a phone at the time, but I did have a pager. And then again, I moved in with my dad for a little bit, but then I had moved out in August of 99 with roommates, and after that time I had no access to a phone, so it was harder to connect with her.
Okay.
So it would be not as frequent as we used to. We literally used to hang out every single day when we lived by each other.
Right, so you kind of just got separated due to a situation in her family. And then it sounds like there was, once again, not to delve into your life, but there were maybe some things going on there that also complicated everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, so she goes over there, and once again, you're remembering this happening in sometime in 1999.
Right.
Okay. Let's move on to this, what I'm just calling the new living arrangement. Now, I want to just maybe sort something out here. April's mother's name is D, or does she go by Gloria, or is it D? What is it?
So her name is Gloria. She does go by D, though.
By D. D-E-E.
Yes.
All right, so if anybody looks into April's family, may see her mother refer, in maybe official articles called Gloria, but I think we're just going to call her D because that's, I think, more commonly what she was called maybe back then.
Yeah.
And now, and maybe that's how you, of course, Amy, knew her. So this is why we're going to call her. Just make, if anybody, of course, we want everybody to do even more research into her disappearance. You run across Gloria and D. Well, what is this? What's her name? It's both. So we're just going to call her D. So the new living arrangement, who was this person? She goes to live with her mother, but then she ends up living with a woman. We're just going to use her first name. Her name is Tina. Any idea why this happened, how this happened?
Honestly, I couldn't provide a lot of information on that. My best guess is her and her mom, I feel like they wanted to have that good mother-daughter relationship and that bond together.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Dee really wanted her to give her some sort of independence, and kind of one of those situations, like my mom was even that way. You want to be an adult, I'm going to allow that to happen, and you can really see how things are. And so I think they were trying to come to the best compromise that they could for the situation and allow April more freedom, and then also try to build that relationship between the both of them.
Okay. And this woman, Tina, she and Dee, were friends, or did they work together? Do we even know?
I am not 100% sure the connection with Tina and Dee, or how long they've known each other. I don't think I ever met Tina. So with that and why she felt that Tina was the best option, I'm not 100% sure with that.
Okay. Regarding, we'll just stick on, we'll go to this just for a moment. You said that April, did she drop out of school, or did her mother just not make her go to school? Do you have any understanding regarding that?
That I'm just not sure of. I have no idea, honestly, if what the case was when it came to her schooling after she left her dad's. I'm not sure.
Okay. All right, so getting back to the living arrangement, she goes and is living with Tina, and I know that we have to be very touchy on this subject. I'll just ask you this. Was it just Tina and April living there alone, or were there other people there?
I think there might have been other people, just based off of the conversation that my brother had with April.
Yeah.
There was mention of a gentleman that was there also, but I'm not 100% sure. Like, I couldn't confirm that for sure, but April did mention somebody else to my brother that was there.
All right, so not only you were talking to April, but your brother was friends with her as well.
Yes.
Okay, so it wasn't just one person. There were multiple people in your family, or multiple, at least two kids who were talking to her.
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, so for some reason, she ends up living with this Tina. There probably some other people living there. Well, wasn't the two of them. Dee thought this was a good arrangement. However, April's not going to school like she should have been. And once again, is this something that happened? In what year did this happen that April went to live with Tina?
So from my understanding, she went to live with Tina. It was either 2 to 3 weeks before she went missing. So it was in December. I would say it was probably the second or third week of December, probably the second week of December of 1999.
All right, we have to remember she went missing in early January. So she moves in there, and then not long after that, she goes missing.
Yes.
Okay. Did either you, I guess your brother, or anybody else you trust, ever speak to April after she moved in to get a feel of how she was feeling about it? We're going to get into this letter that was mentioned in an article later, but just any one-on-one conversations of how April was feeling living with Tina. Any idea?
I personally didn't speak with her when she lived with Tina, but as I mentioned earlier, my brother did talk to her while she was living with Tina.
Yeah.
That's when she mentioned she was happier. She did mention something about a gentleman also that was there. Again, I'm not sure exactly what the whole conversation around that, but she did mention a gentleman also being there. And then my sister, her birthday is January 9th. My sister did talk to April on her birthday before she went missing.
Wow. That's very close. Very close to the time. Wow, very close. Okay.
And they were trying to make plans to meet up. And that was the last time any of my siblings had talked to her.
Okay, of course, that's very close. No wonder. January 9th, it's only, a couple days before the accepted disappearance date, which is January 11th. Right. So, and as best as you can tell, April never said anything about being fearful of anybody. She wasn't talking about running away or going back to her father's, anything like that to your knowledge?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay. Let's now talk about this guy. We cannot use his real name, so we're going to use the name Andrew instead of his real name. And what can you say about Andrew, Amy? We're going to get into specifics of things that make him not that great a guy, but any idea how he and April might have known each other, how they might have met? Had you ever heard of him before she went missing? Anything along those lines?
So I believe that they actually had met each other whenever she lived with her mom, when her involvement with Andrew was during that time. I personally don't think I ever met him. I do remember her talking about the situation and things like that, speaking about him, but I never actually personally had met him.
Okay. I guess what I'm asking also is, in talking to him with you, of course, like you said, now we know that she knew your brother and I guess your other sister as well. Did she ever specifically mention him by name to any of you?
Yeah, she used his name, yes.
Okay, she did. So we know about him before she went missing. And did any of you get any idea of, was this like some sort of serious relationship? I understand that he was at least a few years older, not terribly older, but a few years older than she was. What kind of feel did you get for it back then?
From what she had told me, they were pretty much boyfriend-girlfriend, but they were in a relationship. She was 13 at the time. He was 17. It was a consensual relationship that she wanted to begin with him. And
even though, once again, I have to jump in, we recognize that 13-year-olds cannot determine that, but it was not a situation where he was necessarily physically forcing her to do anything, even though, once again, we understand that 13-year-olds cannot get into consensual sexual relationships according to the law. But as far as her being an independent human, she wanted to be with him. She liked him.
Yeah, to my understanding.
All right, very good. I just wanted to clarify that. Please continue.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so, like I said, it was a relationship that she wanted to be in. However, her mother was not happy with her being in that relationship with that age difference. Of course, I mean, that's not abnormal. I think, like we talked about earlier, as a mother myself, I understand. And so that was the situation, is her mom didn't want him, or her to see him.
Okay. And any idea how long the two had known each other before she went missing? Do you think it possibly goes back a year, or is it maybe 6 months, 3 months? Any ideas?
Honestly, I'm not really sure exactly how long they knew each other. Again, I don't even know how they met each other. I do know that they were involved together in, I believe it was February of 99 is when they were dating.
Wow. So like a year before, almost a year before her disappearance. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe just to ask this as well. Did they meet just because maybe he lived in the neighborhood where mother was, or maybe
it's possible? To my understanding, he did live over in that area, so that's definitely possible. Back in the day, we used to meet people anywhere, at the mall, the Quick Trip, anywhere. We were just social butterflies.
Okay. All right. So now that we know at least a little bit about him, what can you say, once again, being kind of vague about this because we can't say his name, what can you say about the trial that he eventually got into? You've already stated that her mother was not too thrilled about this, so the trial, what was that all about?
Yeah, with that, I don't know a lot of the details. Everything that I know is what I've pretty much read about. The details that I do know are just what April provided us. And so originally I didn't even know about the other victims that were involved in the trial. I didn't know that there was more than one. I thought it was just April. So initially she didn't talk about other girls, and I don't know if that's just because maybe she didn't know. I'm not real sure how stuff like that works. So I just knew of her situation.
Okay. All right. Is this a situation, your understanding is, did her mother go to the police regarding April's relationship with Andrew?
To my understanding, yes.
Okay. But what we're also saying is that at his age, he was having relationships, or let's just say abusing other girls.
Yeah,
has that been alleged?
Yeah, with the information that we have in regards to the other victims, some of them were consensual, but again, just like you had said, due to the age of the girls and how young they were, they're legally not able to say, yes, this is consensual, because they're not able to make that. There were a couple other convictions that were of lewd, fondling, touching, and again, all those girls were underage.
Okay.
So there was a total of 5 girls, and he had 7 convictions.
Okay. And this trial, of which April would have been, I guess, one of the victims, was to take place in 2000?
Yes, in February 2000.
Okay, very good. So we have to remember, just for everybody listening out there, we have a timeline that she goes missing, accepted disappearance date January 11th, 2000. And then this trial in which Andrew was to be the defendant was going to be happening roughly about a month later. How old was, by the time this all rolled around, how old was Andrew at the time?
He was 21 at the time.
So I think we have to establish that maybe, given the ages and how old he was once he went to trial, that he and April had known each other for a while, like some years before this ever happened. This trial happened. And so when we start talking about her being 14 and him being 17 or 18 or whatever, we're going to like back to like 98 or 97 by this point.
Right.
Okay. And so we're just not sure, though, then why it took so long for all of this to come to trial.
Right. There were, again, like I said, there were other victims in his case. And the other victims, there was another one that was, the conviction for one other girl was in 97, in May of 97, I believe. And then there were some other girls, but that was in 99. Is when those other victims' dates of incident happened.
Okay, very good. All right, so it wasn't just something where April met him the year before she went missing. In fact, she had known him for some years, going back to when she was 14. Of course, she was 16 when she went missing.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. All right, now, big question. Your understanding, was April supposed to testify in this trial?
Yes, so there's a little back and forth on that, but yes, she was supposed to testify, but there was also 3 weeks before the trial, they said that she didn't need to testify. The police department said that she didn't need to testify because he was going to take a plea and plead guilty.
Okay.
And then after that, so they told her she didn't have to testify 3 weeks before. And then after that, they came back and they said she did need to testify. And by that time, she had already been missing for 2 weeks.
Wow. Okay. So she's supposed to testify, then she's not supposed to testify. And then when she's supposed to testify again, they can't find her.
Right.
Yeah, she goes missing. It has been missing ever since. Okay. As best as you can tell, how did April feel about the possibility? Of course, we know maybe the prosecution changed its mind, but initially, how did she feel about testifying against Andrew?
She did not want to testify against him because, again, she felt it was a consensual relationship and it was just something that her mother wasn't happy about. But in her eyes, he didn't do anything wrong. Okay. So she was definitely reluctant to testify against him.
Okay. And your understanding, if you've looked into it, do you know if any of these other victims, we know they're all underage and everything, do you know if any of them actually testified in the trial that did eventually happen? Do you have any?
Yeah. Yes, there were other victims that did testify.
They did testify. Okay. All right. Would you say that the charges, what Andrew did against April, were worse, as best as you can tell, than what he did against these other girls? About the same? Any ideas?
Yeah, the charges for April were rape charges, and the other ones were less. They had less sentence to go with them, if that makes sense. So hers definitely carried a heavier time for those convictions.
Okay. And he was convicted, correct?
Yes, he was.
He was. And coincidentally, did he just get out of jail? Of course, we're doing, just to tell everybody, we're doing this interview on March 10th of 2024. Did he just get out of jail, or he's due to get out of jail? What can you say about that?
Yeah, he was released from jail in January of this year.
So going way back to 2000, when this disappearance happens, there's this trial, he's found guilty, and coincidentally, here we are covering her disappearance in 2024, and he just got out of jail recently.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. We know, of course, we've established April went missing by the time this trial rolled around. Was he convicted on the charges involving April?
Yes, he was.
He was. Okay. All right, let me move on to what kind of already talked about this, but we'll go over this again. You told me that was it your sister who spoke to April on January 9th, just 2 days before the accepted disappearance date. Is that true?
Yes.
Wow. Do you know the occasion of this? Do you know why they were talking on that day? Just regular talk or what?
Yeah, my sister, she said that she called her, it was her birthday, and so just calling her to talk with her and try to find a time to meet up and hang out together.
Okay. And so all of you, all right, so that was the last time somebody, of course, maybe other people talked to her, but I think it's important that it's your sister who spoke to her just 2 days before she went missing. I think that's fairly important. Somebody, of course, that we can trust.
Yes.
And everybody, were you and your sister, your brother, all aware of this trial that was going to be happening in February? All aware of it at the time?
At the time, no. We didn't know exactly like when the trial was supposed to happen. We didn't find out really that, oh, this is also the situation until after. Like, obviously, like I told you before, she mentioned it and we knew that there were legal things going on, but we didn't know exactly like exact dates or anything like that.
Okay. In that conversation with your sister, do you know if any trial talk ever popped up?
Not that I know of, no. She didn't mention it.
Okay. Let's move on to this. Let's just now move up. So we've gotten up to January 9th with the call between your sister and April. Let's just move up to January 11th. What is, as best as you can tell, the official story for the disappearance of April?
So what we have, we were able to obtain the police report that has the date it was filed, the date of the incident, and things like that. So we do have that. We have that the incident occurred on the January 11th, 2000, and the time for that is at 10:30 p.m. The address that they do have listed as the incident is her mother's house.
Okay.
However, the official story that was provided was that she was seen leaving the complex where she was staying with her mom's friend, and that she was heading towards Pawnee and Broadway between 10 to 10:30. The roommate had stated that she was going to go to Walmart to get something, but never came back. So since it was late at night, she said her roommate said that she had fallen asleep. April wasn't back when she woke up, and then she also wasn't back by the time she got off of work.
All right, so April seemingly walks off, never comes back.
Yes.
Okay. And how long, once again, please just go through, how long did it take before anybody realized that she was missing, like really, really missing?
So the date that the report was filed, again, this is just what we have on the police report. The date that they officially filed the report was the 13th.
All right, so already it's like over a day later. So the 12th went by and nothing was done.
Right.
Okay, so late on the 11th, she leaves going to Walmart. Once again, as with anything, the listeners can choose to believe that or not, but that's the official story. And then the 12th, doesn't seem like much of anything went on. And then finally on the 13th is when, things started to get rolling. Do you know how they got rolling? Was it like Tina contacting Dee, or do we know like the progression of one person to the next?
That I'm not sure of, honestly, how that whole thing went about. I mean, the only thing I could do is make my best assumption that she let Dee know that April never returned.
Okay. So she walks off, did not come back. You know the area. I've never been there. How far of a walk, if we're to believe she was going to this Walmart, how far away was that?
Yeah, so there's an apartment complex. The street that the apartments are off of is one of like our main streets. It's Broadway, and we have our John Mack Bridge, and then there's these apartment complexes, and Walmart was right in front of that at that time. So it's literally maybe not even 2 minutes to walk there.
2-minute walk. Okay.
Yeah.
2-minute walk, and something happened. All right. Let's move on so things don't get rolling. And do you have any idea, once again, you said you had the, let me ask you some questions. How did you find out that she was missing?
So I had found out from her mom that she was missing. Again, we would still call and try to reach April. And one of the times when I had called, that's when I had found out
Okay, what year? Well, what day was that? Do you think it was the 13th, 14th, 15th?
I honestly could not even remember what the date was.
Okay. I guess I'm asking this is because is it possible she's missing? They think, well, maybe she went to Amy's house and when it was running away or something, and they might have called you just to find out if she was there.
Well, at the time, I didn't have a phone or any way for her to get hold of me.
Okay.
So it was pretty much us calling at our discretion to call her.
Okay. All right. What about police? They do any searches? What did Tina have to say about this? Maybe anybody else that was living in with Tina? Any, for example, any stories that April talked to somebody on the phone before leaving, as if she were maybe arranging to go meet somebody? Anything like that? What can you say about all of that? Best as you can tell.
When it comes to that specific day, we don't know a whole lot. Her roommate didn't know if she couldn't remember if she had called anybody to meet up with them or anything like that. As far as like with searches, when it comes to anything, like with the police department and what occurred with them, we don't know. There was a search done of a property, but again, that was due to a story that I'm not 100% familiar with.
Okay.
But the person of the property that they searched was 100% cleared.
Okay. Now you should know you did try to file a FOIA for all of this, and you were denied.
Yes, we were denied.
Okay. When did that happen? When did you do that?
It was probably within the last couple weeks. Okay. That we filed for that.
Okay, and they said it's an open investigation, and they're not giving you anything.
Right. They don't have anybody assigned to her case, but we can't get any information at all about what they did to try to find her or anything. We have no idea.
Okay. Now, importantly, as best as we can tell, on January 11th, 2000, where was Andrew?
In jail.
He was in jail. Okay, yes. So if anybody's thinking that he might have been meeting up with April so as to get her to not testify, which doesn't sound like she wanted to testify anyway, but maybe he wanted to get her mind right, you might say, he couldn't have done that because he was in jail. And we'll come back to that later. All right, so she goes missing. Do the police think that she's a runaway?
So originally, yes, she was listed as a runaway originally. With the paperwork that we were able to get of the actual police report, it has her listed as a runaway. Mm-hmm. Then once they had come back in regards to the trial, and they said that she did need to testify because he was changing his plea, that's when her mom told him, well, she can't testify because she's missing, and then that's when they enlisted her as an endangered runaway, or endangered missing person, sorry.
Okay, so, all right, so it seems like what went on with the trial did affect how they eventually viewed April's disappearance.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Once again, let's go through that. I have it. It's next on the outline. Let's just go over that again just to make sure everybody understands. The plea change. Please maybe explain that again if you could. That he was going to... was he going to go to trial first? He was going to take the plea first, and then he switched. Please explain all that again if you could.
So, to my understanding, he originally was going to take a plea and plead guilty originally.
Okay.
And then he switched it to where he was not going to take the plea and he was going to plead not guilty.
Okay. All right. And then somewhere in there, April thought that she might have to testify, seemingly did not want to. And then when he changed it to not guilty again and wanted to go to trial, that's when they thought, she wanted to testify, but she had already gone missing.
Yes.
Okay. And we've already established that Andrew eventually was found guilty, and he just got out of trial recently. All right, so just to make sure everybody understands that. What about, what did she, as best as you can tell, what did she take with her? What was left behind of April's possessions?
So, from what we were told by the roommate is that when she left, she didn't even take a jacket or anything, which at that time we did go back and look at the weather at that time, and it was maybe 34 degrees. So definitely cold.
Yeah.
But she said she only left with her apartment keys, wallet, and her pager. No jacket or anything.
Okay, so she had a pager.
Yeah.
I remember those. Talking 25 years ago, technology. I never had one. Anyway, back then, as best as you can tell, Amy, did they check like her pager number to see if anybody tried to call her, anything like that?
So, as far as with the pagers, I think that Dee did try to get some information when it came to the pager, but I don't think they were able to at that time. I do believe that Tina had a phone, and they did pull records of the phone calls, but I don't think they had any leads there either, to my knowledge.
I guess what we're also saying is somebody could have could have reached April without a phone ever ringing in Tina's place.
Yeah, absolutely.
If somebody knew her pager number, once again, I know, the demographic of Unfound and most true crime programs are people who are old enough to remember what pagers were, but for anybody younger, this is a situation, you had a device that when you called a number, it would just like beep, and a very short message would appear on, this is what you call it, beeper, and then you would go to a regular dial-up phone connected to a wall to call the person back if that's what the person wanted you to do.
Right.
The beepers go back way, 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 before the late 1990s. But that's how a pager worked. So it is possible that somebody called her pager, it beeped. We don't really like to theorize, but it's possible somebody said, meet me at Walmart, right?
Yeah, well, her pager at that time, because we actually all had the same pagers, just different colors.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, with those pagers, all we had was where you could put, like, a number in.
Oh, okay.
So it couldn't actually even read out text messages at that time.
Okay.
Right,
all right.
Yeah.
Okay, so they could just put a number in there, and so then we might think, well, maybe she went to Walmart to use a payphone. Remember those?
Yeah.
It's possible. All right, because it sounds to me, definitely. Once again, having done 325 disappearances now, that she took things that she would normally take with her, right?
Right. Yep.
Right? And whereas I will tell the listeners know this as well, that usually if somebody's walking off, let's just say, to commit suicide, they often leave, here in the 21st century, they leave phones behind, wallets behind, and things. This is not what happened with April.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Could it be determined that anything maybe unique missing from her possessions after the fact? Anything that might have stood out?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. Let's move on to this. She kept a journal. What did it say? Has anybody ever seen it? Have you ever read it? Has anybody else ever read it that you trust? Was Andrew mentioned in it? What can you say about her journal?
As far as her journal, she did have one, which I knew that back in the day that was definitely something that all of us girls kept, was just a journaling literally about your day. Is it a good day, bad day, things like that. Yeah. Obviously, we didn't put a whole lot in there because, those have our secrets. So we didn't want to provide too much detail,
Okay.
But I do know that after she had went missing, her journal and all that, her mom and her sister lived in the same household at the time, so they had access to her journal. From what I understand at this point, that journal no longer exists. It's been lost. Her sister did read her journal, but I wasn't provided a lot of information about, what exactly was in there.
Okay. Usually, journals are things that are usually kept around, and people don't. Mm-hmm. Of course, we did cover a disappearance recently where a guy was keeping a journal and his brother said, yeah, I don't know what's happened to it. course, guys keeping journals maybe is a lot rarer.
Right.
But what we're saying here is that the journal existed, but here in 2024, if it's out there, you don't know where it is.
Right.
Okay. As best as you can tell, was Andrew mentioned at all in it?
I don't know.
No
Not that
idea.
I was ever told, no.
Okay. Best once again, just to stay on the journal a little bit more. Is this a situation where is it possible that her mother turned it over to the police, or something like that?
No, I think during some situation where wherever they were at, either it was disposed of or something happened with the journal. But to my knowledge, her mother had possession of it, and then at some point it got lost or disposed of, and it was like not on purpose. I'm not real sure, but something happened to it.
Okay. Well, that's what you'd think. That would be one of those things you'd never lose. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if you're moving from house to house or something, that's something that you'd always keep it in a secure place, because you never know what it might reveal. Maybe something that doesn't mean anything at the time might mean something somewhere down the road.
Right.
All right. So the journal, we're gonna just have to call it lost for now here in 2024. What about, let's go back, of course, to Tina. We're calling her the roommate, but we should establish Tina, like Dee's age, much, much, much older than April was.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, she, though, has not actually been identified until recently. That would be something that I think would be common knowledge from 2000, once again, my experience, but you're telling me that wasn't something that was common knowledge until recently. Why is that?
So I think part of it is, one, the people that we have been trying to push forward to find April, besides her family, are a group of us that we're all around the same age. We were all teens at that time.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain questions that we don't even know to ask, or her mom provides us with information, says it's a roommate, but we don't ever think about, why would it even be important to ask who is the roommate? Back then we didn't think about any questions like that. So I do know that Tina had talked with the police department, provided them information. So I'm sure somewhere in the documents that we did request that she is mentioned there, that is knowledge that the police have. Yeah. However, we didn't have any of that information.
Okay. All right. As best as you can tell, do you think that Tina was forthcoming? Is there any? I guess I'll just put it this way: any stories out there that Tina has told, conflicting stories, has been hard to find, didn't want to take a lie detector test, anything along those lines?
No, not to my knowledge. So once we found out who she was, one of them, us in the group, had reached out to her, and she said that she just disappeared. Again, we don't have any of the documents from the police department, so we have no idea what was said by anybody that they interviewed. We don't even know who they interviewed back then, because they didn't interview any of us.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't have any way to know if somebody provided different information than what was told originally.
Would you say that once Tina's name was discovered here recently and somebody talked to her, would you say that her words today in 2023, 2024 match up with what the story was from 2000 as to the circumstances of April's disappearance? Are they congruent?
Yeah, based off of what her mom has said, yes.
Okay.
That she just doesn't know what happened to her.
Okay. Now, this is something that I found in an article written in 2000 about April's disappearance. This seemed to be news to you, but we have to talk about it because I know a lot of listeners do that. Go to newspapers.com, other places, and love to read original articles about disappearances, because it's very interesting to read about what people were saying at the time and what they're saying now, 24 years later, or sometimes 50 years later, depending on what disappearance we're covering. In one of those articles, a very prominent article in a prominent publication there, it said that April had written a letter to somebody that said that she liked where she was living, meaning living with Tina. Is this true? Can this letter be verified? Is that story was new to you? What can you say about it?
Yeah, with that letter, I have never heard of that, so I have no idea. I have no knowledge of the letter, so I'm not sure where that information came from, or if that letter exists, or if so, where is it? I'm not real sure.
Okay. So I'm just wondering who would. Once again, you knew April. I did not know April. Who would she have even written to even say something like that? Can you think of somebody? Of course, she wouldn't be writing a letter to her father and her mother about this. Obviously, you didn't get that letter because you didn't know about it. Obviously, your siblings didn't get that letter because they would have known about it. Can you think of anybody, being you knew the April the way you did, where it said, yeah, she really liked living with Tina? Who would be most likely, do you think?
Honestly, I'm not real sure. Like I said, April, she journaled, but I have never known her to, write letters and mail a letter. Even back then, she still had access to a phone. Like at her mom's, she had access to a phone, so generally she'd call people. But as far as writing letters, I've just never known her to do that.
Right.
And mailing it to someone or...
Right. In fact, this little next space is going to be edited out. I'm actually going to find that article and read it so people can hear it for themselves. So I'm going to...
Okay.
All right. And so this was an article from the Wichita Eagle on February 5th of 2000, so not quite a month after she went missing. The article is by Deb Groover, Gruver, and it says in one of the middle paragraphs, Wiss's mother, Gloria Clayson, once again also known as Dee, said Friday morning that her daughter has been living with one of Clayson's friends. She said her daughter recently wrote to a friend saying she enjoyed living with the woman. So you can't even begin to guess to say who that friend might have been.
No.
Interesting. All right, that's very, very interesting to me. Okay. So, all right, so we've covered that. Moving on. Tina had a man in her life, and April made comments about him, I guess, to your brother. What can you say about that?
That, again, like I said, I'm not real sure, who he was, if he just either came to visit. She wasn't with Tina for very long, so I don't know if it's somebody that was just coming over to visit. I don't know if it's a boyfriend. I have no idea. She had just mentioned to my brother while they were talking that there was a guy there, had mentioned something about being uncomfortable, and that was the most of it.
Okay. That was
She didn't mention, in what way or anything like that.
Okay, and once again, remind everybody, Tina is like April's mother's age. So presumably, this would be a guy who was much, much, much older than April.
I'm assuming, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So maybe there's something there. Hard to tell. Moving on, April and Andrew, getting back to them a little bit. Do we actually know when, we know the age? Do we know where this happened, when this happened, when let's just call it what it is. That he, even though I know as she's thinking she's going along with it willingly, she sort of has free will, but legally she doesn't. Do we know when and where this happened, where the two of them this happened, that he assaulted her?
I have no idea where that occurred.
Okay. And in addition, because I know a lot of this is probably on a lot of people's minds right now, what about Andrew's family? Any proof that April had any contact with any of them? Maybe, once again, thinking, hey, she's going to testify against Andrew. Maybe we got to do something. Any proof? Did April ever talk to anybody about it, talking to any of Andrew's, if he has brothers, sisters, friends, anything like that?
Not that I know of that she had talked to anybody. He does have family, but we don't know anything about her speaking with them.
Okay. Back in 2000, of course, it sounded like I said, it sounds like you had some of your own issues, things to take care of in your life, Amy. Totally understandable. But when you heard that she was missing and it continued to go on, and of course you've talked about your sister and your brother in this interview, back in 2000, what conclusion did you come to regarding this, if any?
Back then, there were a lot of fingers that were pointed towards like the case and, you know, her testifying. And that's just really what we were told, is that basically that she was supposed to testify, and then all of a sudden she becomes missing. And, you know, as a young teen, there's stuff that I don't know that I don't even know, you know?
Yeah. Sure.
And so at the time, I really thought that it probably was, you know, the person that, you know, Andrew had to be involved in some way.
Yeah.
At that time.
Sure.
Back then, that's my primary thought, is that he had to have something to do with it.
Okay. That's what that was. And would you, once again, speaking for your brother and your sister, that was kind of what they thought too, in general?
Yeah, in general.
Okay. All right, so did she, April ever talk about running away? Do you two ever, your friends, maybe 99, 98, do you ever two talk about running away and, joining the circus or something? I don't know, I don't.
I mean, no, April, at one point she did run away, but it was to our house. But she, that was it. To my knowledge, that was the only time she had ever, ran away. And it was, just because she was having a hard time, and, our place was a place that she felt comfortable, and it was literally just one day, my mom was a mandated reporter. She's a social worker, so of course she took her back to where she needed to be, at her mom's, so, but other than that, she never talked about leaving or anything like that. And we thought that, with her moving in with this roommate, that she would get some of that independence that she wanted, and she never expressed that she wanted to leave or run away.
Why wasn't she going to school?
That I'm not sure. Once she had gone back with her mom, I don't know the dynamics of things. I don't know, what occurred during that time, because, like I said, unfortunately, I didn't have where I could, we weren't as close where we were talking every single day. That connection just wasn't there on a daily basis where we'd be able to talk about that stuff. But I have no idea why she wasn't. I don't know if maybe they were in the process of getting her enrolled into what we have, what we refer to as an alternative school, where it's kind of flexible schooling.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there were talk of putting her in school. I'm not sure. Or maybe I have no idea.
Okay. Because, what is the idle hands of the devil's workshop? What was she doing with all that extra time? Everybody else around her age is going to school. She's not. That's a lot of time to do a lot of thinking and, dare I say, getting in trouble and things. Any idea how she was spending this time in which everybody else, seemingly all teenagers, were going to school? Any ideas?
I'm not sure. I mean, to my best knowledge, she probably was hanging out with people, especially going back over to where she lived at with the roommate, and then her mom's house wasn't far from each other. It was walking distance.
Yeah. Okay.
It was a little further, but it was further than Walmart, but it's definitely walking distance. And I know since she grew up in that neighborhood, she probably had friends that she would hang out with. I know at the time she wasn't working or anything, so it wasn't like she had a job to occupy her time. So knowing April, she probably was hanging out with someone.
Okay. Right, hanging out with someone who either also wasn't going to school with her, or somebody who was so old that the person didn't have to go to school.
Right, exactly.
Right, and either way, maybe that sounds like bad news either way. All right, so we just don't know how she was spending her time and all that, but like you said, your sister talked to her 2 days before that. She seemed in good spirits. No anybody abusing her, anybody stalking her, anything like that. Okay.
Right.
How did you get involved in this, Amy? Why am I talking to you today on March 10th of 2024? How did you get involved in all this?
I mean, I've been there since the beginning. April is just, you have certain people that come into your life.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
It's all right. Take your time.
That are certain people that are important to you.
Yeah. Because, like you said, I mean, you're a wife, you're a mother of 4 boys. You know, you got a lot on your plate, and you're making time for this as well. This just shows me how important this is to you. And of course, like you said, you've already stated for yourself, you had some things going on at the time where you're living, outside of your family's home, at 16, and here you are in 2024. With a lot on your plate already, trying to figure out what happened to your friend, going back 25 years ago. And so,
Right.
That's just what I'm asking you. How did you choose to get involved in this?
She's a person, like, she literally was one of my best friends growing up, and she was loved. She was loved. We loved to be around her. I never in a million years thought that, having been disconnected from her for a couple months, that I would never get to talk to her again. And I loved her. My whole family loved her. There's just people in your life that are, I feel like you have soul ties with, that you're just connected with, that are like lifelong friends. And she was one of those people. She wasn't just your normal, occasional friend. We had a connection, we had a bond, and I loved her. My brother loved her, my sister, my mom. She's very loved, and it literally over all these years has consumed me, just not knowing where she's at, because she deserves to be found. She was important. She's very loved, and I don't want people to stop looking for her.
Right. So you've been working on this, since then, or has this been a more recent? Of course, you just talked about how you did a FOIA just within the last couple weeks. How long would you say it's been since you started accumulating all this information that we've talked about here today?
So myself, my sister, my brother, and then one of her friends, Tiffany, from when she was younger. Tiffany contacted myself. She created a group chat with myself, my brother, and my sister, and she kind of started the ball to get it rolling. Thankfully, I'm so thankful for her, because obviously I'm able to, talk with my brother and my sister about things, but we've never been involved in something like this. We don't know, anything about missing persons, and so all of us feel the same way. We love her. We miss her. We want to find her. And so now that we're older and we understand things a little bit better, and knowing what resources that we have, and kind of how to go about things a little bit better than when we were teenagers when she went missing, it's motivated us to try to find answers, and get more information to hopefully find her.
Have you ever spoken to her father about her disappearance? Being that that's how you got to know her in the first place, have you ever spoken to him about her disappearance?
No, I did reach out to him via Facebook Messenger, but it shows he hasn't seen my message and has not replied to it.
Okay. Do you, none of my business where you live, do you not live in the area? Could you just, I'm not telling you to not or not to. It's totally your choice. Do you not live near there? You go over, knock on his door? Would that be weird or what?
I don't think he lives in the same city anymore. I know he doesn't live where he used to. Okay. Because I would be very open to talking with him, and if I could get that connection with him and be able to have a conversation, 100%. Her dad made me feel comfortable. He was always very kind to us, even as teens. So I would have no problem talking to him, but I just don't have any other way to find him, really. Well, I know where he's at, but I don't know, where he lives or anything.
Okay. What about her mother, Dee? It sounds to me, I know you speak, or you or one of your siblings speak to her much more often, correct?
Yeah, so with Dee, we've kept in touch with Dee over the years. I mean, we have her on Facebook, so of course we see each other on Facebook, but we've had where she will call. I've talked with her sister, things like that. And so we've kept in contact with her over this entire time throughout all these years, just checking in on her, see how things are going, and things like that. And all of us kids have, but, Tiffany, my brother, and my sister also.
Okay. And given that we talked about Andrew and how he just got out of jail, is he on your list of people to talk to at some point?
At this time, it would be nice to talk to him, definitely, just to see, if he had talked with anybody, especially since we're not able to get access to anything when it comes to the case and what occurred and who they talked to. We're trying to, like, we had reached out to the roommate. Anybody that is willing to talk to us or tell us what they know, we want to talk to. So, it would be nice to eventually definitely talk to him and see just if he knows anything at all.
Over the years, so her father lived in Hayesville. Where did her mother live at the time?
Wichita.
In actual Wichita, okay.
Yeah.
Of course we know kids talk, teenagers talk. Doesn't matter if it's 1973 or 2000 or 2024. Kids love the rumor mill and everything else. Did you ever get a feel for what other teenagers in the area had to say about her disappearance, and maybe any additional names? Of course, we talked about Andrew. Any other names maybe that might have popped up? Some other boy that April knew? Anything like that?
We do know that at the time she was dating a guy named Matt, which Tiffany has been able to talk with him. I don't know more information about that at all, but I do know that he had spoke with her also kind of around the time she went missing, and he was going to bed and said that he would talk with her like the next day, and that never happened.
That didn't happen, I see.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't look very good for him.
I think he's been fully cleared to my knowledge and everything.
Okay.
Like, he's been fully cooperative.
Okay. All right, so that's one additional name that might have been in her life at the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Amy, do you have a Facebook page, website, anything like that set up for April's disappearance? If so, why don't you give it out to the audience right now?
Yeah, we created a new Facebook page that's called What Happened to April Wiss. So myself, my brother, my sister, and Tiffany, we talk with people on there. We open that group to try to get any information for April that we can.
Okay. All right. Once again, why don't you say the title of it one more time?
What Happened to April Wiss?
WISS.
Yes.
Amy, any final words before we complete this interview?
I'm just hoping at one point we'll be able to find April. Thankfully, we are getting some people that are talking and, reaching out to us with information that they might know. What we originally thought might have been the reason that she disappeared, it's starting to look like more and more that is inaccurate. And so we just want answers. We just want answers. We want to be able to find her. We want, to bring her case to an actual close and just know what happened. That's all we want.
Okay. Amy, thank you for appearing on this episode of Unfound.
Thanks, Ed. I appreciate you having me on.
You're welcome. And that was my March 10th, 2024 interview with Amy Wilson, best friend of April Wiss. I thank her for joining me and all of you on this episode. In addition, I've made a short YouTube video to show the locations mentioned in my talk with Amy. Lots to cover in this summation, although I don't want to make it too long. As you know, I want all of you to think for yourselves. First, as far as I can tell, there are no facts to support the idea that April disappeared due to the trial. Yes, it could have happened, but even if we theorize she disappeared due to the trial, does this mean she left on her own because she didn't want to testify? Does it mean that someone in Andrew's family, not his real name, harmed her? Does it mean that someone not connected to Andrew harmed her because of the trial? Really, you could go in many directions with this. Second, disappearances are about people, not circumstances. I think that's become my favorite saying regarding disappearances now. And certainly our ages play a role in who we are. 16-year-olds are much more prone to irrational emotional responses to comparatively small stimuli, meaning they're almost all drama queens. And really, this is why law enforcement so often defaults to runaway, because that is the most common reason they disappear. For April, is there any reason to think she did not run away? Sure, but nothing factual. What I'm saying is, had April been 35, then the odds would be much higher that somebody harmed her, because 35-year-olds don't take off on their own nearly as often as teenagers. Third and last, and I guess this kind of goes along with number 2, once again looking at teenager April, she was living with a virtual stranger. She wasn't going to school. Her parents were divorced. I have zero facts at this time to support what I'm about to say, but I think perceptually, we all know this is true. Those 3 issues make it much more likely that a teenager will run away. And those 3 make it much more likely that the teenager will be harmed. And in fact, we know April was. By Andrew. He got convicted for it. So we'll keep working on it. Unfound isn't going away anytime soon. I'll continue to learn. You'll hopefully be learning as well. And us all working together, we may not be able to make disappearances less harmful, but we can surely make them less mysterious and even more rare. If you'd like to hear and read more of my in-depth analysis into the disappearance of April Wiss, please go to patreon.com/Unfound Podcast, sign up, and partake in the Unfound blog. Until then, I leave the public theorizing up to you. And that's the program. Right now, while you are in your podcast platform, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, wherever, give Unfound a 5-star review, a thumbs up, whatever that platform allows. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've just finished this episode of Unfound.